So I'm watching MSNBC, and they've got this guy on who's I've never heard of, but who apparently has written a book about impeachment, who's been waiting for, what is that, since the Clinton impeachment? He's just waiting around. This is his only shot to get a gig on the news. So, because he wrote this book. And anyway, they have him on there. And he, at the end of the little time that they had with him, he very seriously starts talking about the legitimate fear. Not that President Trump will be voted out of office, not that President Trump will be impeached and removed from office, but that President Trump won't actually leave office no matter what.
For crying out loud.
So, and he was literally saying that he will remain in his bedroom and all of his supporters will flock to the White House to make sure that they cannot remove him from office.
It's the reality-based community.
You know what this reminds me of? There was sort of some fringe elements on the right who swore that Obama would never leave office in January of 2017. But that was pretty much restricted to the comment sections of blog posts. If you're on the left and you say something nutty like this, Rachel Maddow will stick you on her show for an hour.
Well, and this wasn't Rachel. It was some guy I'd never seen who was the anchor of their midday news, which is countless dozens of people watching this.
You said you were watching some guy on MSNBC. I assumed it was Rachel.
But anyway, I just and then after he made that remark, the anchor and the other guests that they had kind of nodded very serious. They're like, well, that's a pretty
real serious concern.
It's a substantial, serious concern. Yeah. No matter how whacked you are about this whole thing or how much you firmly believe that the president committed impeachable offenses, is there anybody who really thinks that Donald Trump is going to hole up inside the Lincoln bedroom and shout through a bullhorn, "You'll never take me alive"?
I don't know. Scotty's a billionaire. That's an awful lot of door wedges. That's an awful lot of door wedges.
He'd just be he'd tilt a chair up against the doorknob.
Exactly.
Oh, and it would be the classiest, most luxurious golden chair you ever saw. It's not going to budge.
Best door block you've ever seen.
Is that, man, between the golden chair and the golden shower, he's got all the best stuff, doesn't he?
Dude.
Anyway, so at this point, now that you've left the room, we can tell you that this is... This is our Right Angle Backstage meeting. We've had a number of new members this week, and so you may have been the unfortunate heirs to this. Only members can see this show, and it is that good. And frankly, it's not really a show. We're just having a meeting and we're talking about what we're going to do this week on Right Angle. We shoot 5 episodes a week, one of which is reserved unto the members alone. And this week I have 2 episodes. We kind of round robin host. Each of us takes a turn hosting 2 episodes. So this week I have 2 topics, and I will tell you guys, it is so difficult to find any story in the news that's worth talking about that has nothing to do with the whole impeachment inquiry and everything swirling around that.
No, Scott, I've got one. Ben, this is just, the kind of a cultural food sort of a thing. My wife and I are big foodies, but Ben & Jerry's is introducing a new flavor. It's got a fresh fruit, fresh breath kind of a thing. It's called impeachment.
It is not. They're not doing that, are they?
No, they're not doing that.
I could see them doing that. That's believable.
Me too. Me too.
Oh,
I wouldn't put anything past those communists.
Try and get
who,
a
by the way,
dollar
learned
past
how to
them.
make ice cream by taking a correspondence course from my alma mater, Penn State.
Is that right?
Yes, they did. Yes. Penn State offers an ice cream making class, and the Penn State Creamery is legendary for its ice cream. So,
wow.
But Ben and Jerry kind of learned how to do their thing by taking this correspondence course. So anyway, so here are my topic suggestions that have nothing to do with the president's impeachment. And by the way, if you want to see our wall-to-wall impeachment coverage, we do have other episodes at the Bill Whittle channel on YouTube, as well as for members at BillWhittle.com, where you can go there and you can see the coverage we've done, specifically during Bill Whittle Now, which is my favorite show because I get to pretend that Bill is not the boss and just harangue him. It's awesome.
That's a big plus.
And I do get a thorough haranguing. That's a fact.
So here are the two topics, and you guys tell me which one you think should have priority. Although it doesn't really matter because we're going to do both of them anyway. Number one is John Bolton, the recently removed. What did they call his title? Was he National Security Advisor?
Yeah,
he was,
and he was resigned from the Trump administration, and he's recently made some remarks that seem to suggest that strong disagreements with the president's position, specifically on North Korea. Not on everything. I mean, he's with the president when it comes to NATO doing more of its fair share for defending their own countries. But specifically with North Korea, it came across, he didn't use this term, and I don't think he even mentioned the president by name, but it came across as if he was saying he thinks the president is a little naive for thinking that Kim Jong-un is actually going to keep up his end of any deal that they would eventually agree to. He's also upset that the president was not upset about some short-range missile testing, which Bolton believes is a violation of UN sanctions, and so does South Korea and Japan believe that. But the president himself apparently didn't believe it and didn't think it was that big of a deal. And so I guess the whole question occurred to me, whose judgment on such an issue do I tend to give more weight to? A relative rookie president or a guy who's been in the foreign policy game for years and years? Now, I know a lot of our members and viewers will immediately say, oh, John Bolton's a war hawk. He never should have been part of the administration. I mean, I saw everything after we did the Bolton gets fired episode.
A couple of weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah, and people are saying the reason why Trump hired John Bolton to be his national security advisor because he wanted to keep his enemies close. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. He's got a lot of enemies. He didn't have to pick the guy who was the biggest war hawk of all. Anyway, so I just thought that would make an interesting topic of discussion. Is the president being hornswoggled by Kim Jong-un?
Okay.
Excellent.
That's it. And you will, those of you who watch this backstage meeting and have seen it for any length of time will realize that topic suggestions made by either Bill or Steve result in vigorous discussion. Any topic suggestions I make just kind of, there's like crickets afterward. All right. That's what Al Sharpton said when I walked past him in Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C. I said, hey, Reverend Sharpton. And he goes, all right. Okay, so the other topic is not a happy one. This is the jury came back with a verdict in Dallas today as we record this, that former police officer, Dallas police officer Amber Geiger is guilty, unanimous verdict on the part of the jury in that case, guilty of murder of a young man, 26-year-old Botham Jean, who was sitting in his apartment eating ice cream when Amber Geiger opened his apartment door, walked in, thought she was in her apartment, thought he was an intruder. She's an off-duty police officer. She shoots him dead.
Yeah. It's a tragic story. What, was it murder in the second degree, I'm guessing? I mean, clearly it wasn't premeditated.
You know, it's funny. The USA Today story I read made a distinction between manslaughter and murder and basically said murder, but they didn't get into the degree thing.
Okay, I'm going to have to guess it's second degree, which seems right. I mean, she didn't accidentally discharge her firearm.
No, in fact, she says she intended to discharge her firearm and she thought she was in her own apartment. She thought she was shooting an intruder, and she's quite contrite. And she's, weeping openly and saying, I wish that he had shot me. And just, as her attorney referred to it as a horrible series of accidents. But it brought up a lot of interesting issues. The ongoing issue of Black Lives Matter and white police officers shooting unarmed black men. Just this whole idea of, believe it or not, Amber Geiger's own attorneys at one point tried to mount sort of a mitigating defense using the Castle Doctrine, saying that she was justified, in essence, in using deadly force because she thought she was in her house when she was in his house apartment.
Maybe we should save this for the actual segment. Did they do a talk screen on her? I can't imagine. When you walk into your own home and your husband or your wife has just moved one thing, you're aware of it, even if you aren't consciously aware that something is different and something is wrong. How do you walk into the wrong apartment and think it's yours to the extent that you actually shoot somebody in there?
There were two excuses I heard. One was that she was exhausted after a long shift. She actually parked on the wrong deck of the parking garage and got off, therefore, on the wrong floor. His apartment is apparently over or under hers. And then the second thing is that she was actively engaged in either a phone call or a sexting interaction with somebody she was having an affair with, another police officer that she was having an affair with.
How did she get into the room?
Well, apparently the door was unlocked, and she said she remembered when she went to open the door that it was unlocked, and that heightened her concern because she thought, why is my door unlocked? Now, somehow she missed the red doormat in front of his door that she doesn't even have a doormat. But
it sounds, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It sounds like an accident. It really does. But you can't just have somebody walk into your house and shoot you because they thought they were in their house. I mean, I don't want to live in a world where somebody could say, hey, I feel really bad about that. I really thought it was my house, and I'm sorry I murdered your son. But turns out I was mistaken. That's, there's a lot of I'm not saying there's anything there that smells fishy or anything, is because it doesn't happen very often. So 300 million people, but still, I don't think that's something you just get to say, hey, my bad, No, I really don't.
You don't. I mean, you cut somebody some slack if the guy walks into the wrong apartment because he's not paying attention and startles an off-duty police officer in her own home.
Correct.
This isn't that. Not even close.
Well, apparently when she came in the door, he, of course, being startled, got up from the sofa where he was eating ice cream and started toward her. And she says that she shouted, "Show me your hands," or "Put your hands up," or something like that. Other neighbors didn't hear that loud shout. Apparently, there was no corroborating testimony of that. And she said that because he was coming at her and she thought she was in her house and that he was a burglar, that she felt threatened and she shot him in center mass, Good
Lord.
She now faces 99 years in prison when they go to the sentencing phase of this.
Wow. I don't know what's going to happen to the sentence. There's no good sentence for this. There's not a bad guy. There's somebody who made a hideous mistake and has to be punished for it. But I would not want to be either the jury or the judge trying to impose the right sentence for that. I'd want it to be a long time, but do you actually make it effectively for life? I don't know. This is why I'm not in that business.
Yeah. Well, those are my two topics, the Bolton, North Korea thing and Amber Geiger. Stephen Green, what you got for us?
Well, I'm not going to talk about the Trump Georgia butt peach tweet story.
We are grateful for that.
I don't know if you saw this thing, but the semi-well-known singer who goes by the name of Lizzo or Liza, I can't remember.
So you are going to talk about this.
A little bit, yeah, because it's funny. She put up a tweet last week, and this is so very, very clever and fresh. You know how like 40 years ago, Prince on his lyric sheets would have a little glyph for an eyeball instead of the word I? Well, in this totally fresh and clever twist, she tweeted, "I am," and then a peach emoji, and then MENT. Impeachment. You get it? Isn't that great? Isn't that
this
clever?
is not another Ben and Jerry's joke.
No, 120,000 likes on this tweet so far. And the Washington Post felt the need to shine the light, so that democracy doesn't die in darkness on this story. And they worked in stuff about ancient cuneiform script. And of course, the controversy surrounding the crease on the peach emoji. And orange man bad and peaches are kind of orange. And do I have to draw it for you, sheeple? It's just, I'm amazed.
I miss the good old days
every day because of my job.
I miss the good old days when the newspaper only had a certain amount of space each day.
They had to be a little more judicious
before storage became infinite. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a brilliant point. So I felt like I had to share this with a wider audience because it really lit up my morning today, and I wanted to light up yours as well, or something.
Sometimes, Stephen, a peach is just a peach.
Just a peach, indeed. I mean. They devoted a column-length thing on this in the lifestyle section. The Washington Post, one of the great newspapers, it says something about the state of our newspapers.
Well, Yeah.
Yeah. But what I'm really going to talk about this week is you guys know the law professor Eric Posner. He is no friend of the right. He was pushing Merrick Garland 3 years ago and all the rest.
Merrick Garland, the Supreme Court justice who President Obama nominated, but Mitch McConnell tied up so that they wouldn't come to a vote for his confirmation.
Yes. And I believe, I made a joke about this when what's his name? Stevens retired and it became the Kavanaugh seat. But I was joking before Trump named Kavanaugh that now Merrick Garland gets 2 seats. And I think the left actually believed that.
You know, this is why our members come here. It's for that great Merrick Garland humor that
we don't get nearly enough of that
anywhere.
Anyway, I want to talk about what Eric Posner is calling the impeachment trap. You know, we went down this road before with the Republicans 21 years ago, where Newt Gingrich came after Bill Clinton with everything he had. And of course, Clinton was impeached, but the trial moved to the Senate, and it wasn't even a very close vote. They kept Clinton in office, and Clinton came out of the thing stronger than ever. Newt Gingrich ended up being toppled by a scandal that if he hadn't pushed the Monica Lewinsky thing, he probably would have survived. And the Democrats are doing this to themselves, even with the 2020 hindsight. And I think we should talk about, I don't know, maybe the schadenfreude of it.
2020 hindsight. That's an interesting little play on words for the 2020 election.
I hadn't even thought of that. I'm so clueless today.
So, well, and Bill said this before on a previous episode of Bill Whittle Now, that, you know, he relishes the thought of what President Trump can do with this kind of a fight against what I heard described this week somewhere as the, coastal elites that Trump loves to have a battle with these folks. But it just, you wonder, like, the thought process behind closed doors. Like, does nobody bring up this? Is nobody in that meeting with Pelosi and when they brought the caucus together, and nobody says, hey, wait a minute, you remember when Bill Clinton got reelected? Do you remember what happened right before that?
Well, actually, his impeachment was that took place over 97, 98, so it was after his reelection.
Oh, okay.
But politically, his second term was rejuvenated by surviving that impeachment fight. And as I said, Newt Gingrich got toppled by a scandal that I don't think ever would have seen the light of day because it was just so common and tawdry in D.C.
Well, clearly, I'm not going to be the guy in that meeting reminding people of historical events, since I can't remember when anything happened.
Well, to be the guy who's reminding people of historical events, you know, the guy saying, hey, do we really want to do this? I mean, this is the guy who thinks that if you give $500 to a drug addict, they're going to invest $450 of it so that they don't have to worry quite so much about next month's rent. You know, I mean, the Democrats can't control this. This is an addiction for them. They want that asterisk next to his name. They may know on the back of their heads that it won't actually happen, but that's a small price to pay for these people who live in this wonderland of, if I want it to be true, it is true. I think their desire to put that asterisk next to his name is stronger than their desire to beat him in 2020 at the moment, because these people are incapable of delayed gratification. So I don't think they're going to get the impeachment, and I do think it's going to cost them in November, next November. And couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of swells.
Indeed. You know, Bill, you said that asterisk thing, and I immediately went to Kavanaugh, because that's what they've been calling the continued assault on Kavanaugh, is put an asterisk by his name to make all of his decisions suspect somehow.
Rapist, to say the rapist through this one. Yeah. This is who we're dealing with.
And
this
yet
is
I
what
still
we're
think of
dealing
Pete
with.
Rose as Charlie Hustle and have nothing but the highest degree of respect for his performance on the field.
You have to. He was one of the greatest players that ever lived.
So Steve, log line for this show is?
The impeachment trap.
Trap. Okay, that's the word I was looking for. Okay. Sir William of Whittle.
Yes.
You have once again been disappointed by SMOD.
Well, morning's still young.
That's right.
The Independent sends me to an article by our friend James Lilacs, who I haven't seen for a long time.
Lilacs.
Yeah.
But the Lilacs thing takes me to something that I wanted to talk about anyway. We all remember that giant putrid pile of garbage that was generating plague-filled rats in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Well, it's not there anymore.
Oh, good. Where'd it go?
And you think, because the city, the Democrats that run the city of Los Angeles, in a bout of absolute shame, decided to sacrifice their own pay and get the thing cleaned up.
Oh, good for them. Wow.
Of course not.
Oh.
A young conservative, a young long-haired conservative. You'd think I'd have his name memorized now because he's a great guy, Scott Presler.
This is not the guy from Baltimore who cleaned up the Baltimore neighborhood.
Yes, it is.
He went to L.A.
He basically took 200 people in hazmat suits and cleaned it up with volunteers, did it in 3 or 4 hours, and done.
Presler for president.
Not only did the L.A. Times not even commend him on it. They didn't even mention it. And so here's this guy who basically gets conservatives to come in and clean it up on a volunteer basis. It's done. It's over. Done. It would have been sitting there for another 5 years if he hadn't done it. And now that he's done it, he's being excoriated because he's a showboater.
You know, he eliminated the natural habitat of plague rats, Bill. He's against the environment. He's anti-earth and wildlife and all the rest.
He's a conservative.
Yeah.
By the way, Bill, on a related story, I don't know if you saw this. It was a screaming headline on Drudge, although slightly inaccurate. Today in the White House press room, a mouse dropped from the ceiling into the lap of a journalist. Now, I
heard it was a rat.
The Drudge headline said rat, but I actually saw a video of it. It was a mouse. It was about this big.
You know, mouse droppings, that's better than you usually get out of the White House press corps, so...
But
it's an unscheduled mouse dropping.
Not only that, but when Scott Presler cleaned up Baltimore, the Baltimore Sun, rather than thanking him and commending him, criticized him intensely, basically saying, "Who are you, a rich white guy, to come in here and clean up this mess?"
Yeah.
And the answer is, I'm the only guy left who cares. Apparently,
the guy who cleaned up the damn mess.
And I'll read this on the show, but listen to this. This is what the Baltimore Sun had to say, kind of in their snarky parting shot at him. "We also hope Mr. Presler keeps his promise to return to Baltimore once a month. It would definitely give his motives more credibility. It might also give him better perspective about the city's problems than any single visit can provide. Maybe it could even lead him and his followers to advocate for federal housing, healthcare, transportation, education, criminal justice, civil rights, and anti-poverty policies aimed at urban communities." Well, my understanding is that you've got federal housing programs, healthcare, transportation, education, criminal justice, civil rights, and anti-poverty policies in place and have for 50 years now. Yeah. And you've got steaming piles of garbage filled with bubonic plague. Maybe this idea is not as good as the idea of saying, "Hey, why don't we just go up and do this? No one else is doing it. The government's taking our money." I think Scott Presler ought to be exempted. Whatever money he has spent on this, and give him, I don't know, $15 an hour is a fair minimum wage. Give him that and take all of the time and money he's put into this, and that needs to be just simply exempted from his taxes. You just take it out.
If you don't do anything, you're the devil. If you do something, you're the devil because you didn't do everything.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's exactly it. You cleaned up our mess, fine, but unless you give us $15 billion more, whatever the total would come up to, I just pulled that number out of my head. Then it doesn't count. Not only that, but you don't understand us. You're a bad person because you don't live in our filth that we can't clean up ourselves.
Yeah, what is Scott Presler doing for the manned mission to Mars? Nothing.
Slowing it down, apparently, by keeping Earth a little more livable. I suppose you can say that that's the case.
Fewer rich people want to abandon the planet as a result of his work.
Well, what's interesting about that? What's interesting about the thing that the Baltimore Sun wrote was that basically Scott Presler did it, but he doesn't realize the answer is more federal money. And Scott Presler's response is, it didn't cost any money at all.
Yeah,
it didn't cost a dime.
Wow, volunteerism.
It just cost volunteers and people who cared. And those people are called conservatives. And so your neighborhood is cleaned up now. Thank you. Scott Presler. So's my neighborhood cleaned up now. Thank you, Scott. And
Now,
he doesn't
when he
seem
did
like the kind
Baltimore
of guy
Bill,
who's
he
going to back
wasn't
down.
like in your face about his conservatism.
No, on the contrary, he was just there cleaning up, and he was working with locals, all kinds of local people. He didn't bring an army of
Banners and posters and
yeah,
No,
he
no
didn't come in
MAGA
with-
hats
no,
that the crews
nothing.
had to wear.
No MAGA hats, but in Los Angeles, hazmat suits, complete hazmat
Oh,
suits.
plague rats. Hello, of course you're wearing
plague
hazmat
rats,
suits.
typhoid, all that stuff. Yeah. And so the reason they hate him is because he's embarrassed them. And he's embarrassed them by showing just how ridiculous we don't have the money to clean this up. All right. The city of Los Angeles, with its billions and billions of dollars of revenue base, doesn't have the money to clean this up. So we'll just call 200 people and we'll do it for free. That's what drives him nuts, is the fact that he did it for free.
When I was
that drives him nuts.
County commissioner, we had a number, I forget how many, of parks throughout the county that were county parks. So the county owned them, was responsible for their maintenance, was responsible for upgrades and stuff like that. And it confused me because I thought, well, if anything, a park, for the most part, these little parks were intensely local affairs. Nobody drove a long way so that they could go to a county park that was in another township, for example. You went to the little park nearest you and let the kids play on the playground or took a bike ride or hike around the path or whatever. And so at the time, I was suggesting, I said, why don't we just, instead of having the expense of maintaining these little parks, which really have no sort of county-ishness, why don't we turn them over to the local citizens in the townships and let them find volunteers to help do things like pick up the trash and mow the grass
not
and
only
things
that,
like
but
that.
I bet parents would get together and install new playground equipment every few years, or maybe put in some of those permanent barbecue pits that it's not in the county budget, that kind of thing, and improve them because it's local and they've got a stake in it.
Well, you can imagine how that message was welcomed.
My favorite part of this is that it shows once again what the actual motives of these city governance Democrats are all about. If their motives were genuinely that they cared about poor people and homeless people, they would be grateful that somebody took it upon themselves to clear out this public health threat.
Yes.
But they're not grateful. They're actually infuriated. They're infuriated because somebody showed them that this thing that says you're going to need a lot more money than this is something you don't need a lot more money than. Yeah. And furthermore, it just goes to show you that if you had these kind of people around, and we used to have a lot more of this than we have now, you don't need the damn city government at all, basically, is what it looks like to me. Maybe you need a mayor or something to answer correspondence, and that's about it.
Local governments like that have really stripped us of any sense of civic responsibility because essentially we have outsourced all of that to these bureaucrats who use then these little projects in order to get reelected because they can say, well, look, we put up the new, $50,000 worth of playground equipment at the local park or whatever they did, and they have essentially said to you, oh, no, don't do anything. In fact, it's probably not legal for you to do stuff like this. It is probably a violation of city ordinance and certainly a violation of our agreements with our unions.
If you improve the city on your own, we will sue you and put you in jail or hit you with heavy fines. Not cleaning up the city is our job. And that's the lesson.
Where is he from?
I don't know.
I forget where he came to Baltimore
from. Virginia. I think he said.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he said something about why is an outsider from Northern Virginia here and not California elected leadership? This is cleaning up the LA thing, which is in fact the question, ain't it?
If he had been smart, he would have done like those clean the ocean of plastics guys and made little bracelets out of the garbage that he pulled from the bubonic heaps in Los Angeles and sold those. And
shipped those bracelets.
There's a whole industry
out to the entire Democratic leadership in Sacramento and say, "Here's your little plague bracelet."
That's right. Okay, well, this sounds like a fun lineup. Ladies and gentlemen, we are the people that you are paying to do the work that nobody else wants to do. And certainly no American wants to do. So that's why.
That's right.
That's
doing
why
the
you
jobs
got
that
us.
no American will take.
That's right. And it is our honor to do this. We continue to appreciate the blog posts of our members on the website, as well as their comments, the interaction among them and between them. We had a couple of incidents this week where there were people who were having some financial struggles and other members who wanted to step up and help them. This happens a lot, by the way, which is really cool.
Love this.
And plus, we get to see all the encouraging comments that you leave on YouTube. And yes, I plow through all of those comments because I know for every 100 negative comments, you're going to say something positive that's going to encourage me and make it worthwhile for me to eat that Los Angeles sandwich all the way down.
Oh, I was about to say you really cleaned that up, but you actually made it dirtier.
So anyway, thank you to the members of BillWhittle.com for making this happen. We're going to get about recording this week's episodes of Right Angle. For Stephen Green and Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thank you.